Welcome to the French Wedding Podcast with your host Naïm, the only podcast in English about weddings in France. Great conversations, tips and insights about your French wedding, some wisdom before your big day, and the opportunity to hear wedding professionals actually living and working in France, only for your day to be the most amazing to remember.
Hello everyone and welcome to the French Wedding Podcast. Greetings from France. This is the place where we're recording this show. I'm Naïm, professional ceremony officiant based in my hometown, Paris, and I created this show especially for future brides and grooms willing to get married in Paris or anywhere in France. Each episode is an occasion to meet a main actor of the industry, can be a vendor such as a wedding planner, hair and makeup artist, bridal salon, videographer, venue owner, bloggers, you name it. This show exists to bring you some insight about how people do things in France regarding the wedding industry, but we also share funny stories, things to know, and special memories when we happen to work together on the very same wedding. My guest today has a background in corporate events, and she's also a romantic at heart. She's a planner and a designer with a passion for bringing beautiful moments to fruition. She specializes in destination weddings in Paris, but will happily travel to any location worldwide. Meet Ariel, the founder of Wonderstruck Events, a luxury experience you can't afford to not have. Ariel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here and to start off a new year of conversations with wedding professionals in Paris. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Of course.
I'd like to start this by asking you, where in the world are you right now?
Yes, I often get that question because I am a destination planner. So
Yeah.
people often don't really know where I actually am based, but I am based in Canada. So in Vancouver, Canada.
Oh, wow.
Um, this is where I've lived my whole life, and it's actually where I started my career. But only recently in the last year or so that I've transitioned to doing destination weddings, primarily in Paris and beyond.
Okay, so I'd like obviously to ask you these questions. How how did you come up to be specifically attracted to Paris or France for destination weddings?
Well, I think there's many reasons. I think anyone who visits your city easily falls in love with it. There's so much character, there's so much charm, there's so much inspiration everywhere, and it's obviously a very romantic city.
Mhm.
So I think it's hard to find those type of elements in specifically in North America, certainly in Canada, but I think those venues and that type of ambiance is hard to come by. So I think a lot of North American couples who travel to Europe and specifically Paris, they fall in love with that and they want to have their wedding there. So that's kind of for me. That's also what I experienced when I visited your country for the first time. Um, so that's where I transitioned my business now.
It's a great idea. When was the first time you came to Paris?
2 years ago, so
Okay.
2017, 2018. Yeah. So
And
that was
how
my
was
first
it?
time, and then
Yeah.
it was really incredible. Yeah. So we did a lot of the typical sightseeing. So I've kind of tried to cram everything in the first trip, which
Yeah,
it's not maybe
obviously.
the best way to do it, but then afterwards, the following years when we visited each year, it's much more relaxed, and you can actually just
Mhm.
enjoy the city without the tourist things.
Yeah, of course. And did you feel like your first trip was some kind of a guidance for you to serve the brides and grooms, advising things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my first trip, I started doing a little bit of research, and I realized there was a spot that I could fill because I am of Chinese background, so I speak fluent in Mandarin,
Okay.
and I felt like there was a spot I could fill because there's a lot of Asian couples coming abroad from Asia to
Absolutely, yeah.
Paris. And then I found a lot of the planners and the vendors that work in Paris primarily speak English and French.
Hmm.
So I felt there was a void. There was only maybe a handful, or one or two. companies that did specialize in Asian couples and could speak the language. So I felt that I could maybe fill that gap a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. It would be some kind of like a mix of all the things that you're good at. Like, obviously, you speak the language because you have a background. And I think I've read somewhere, if I'm not wrong, if my sources are good, that you have a background in events. And yeah, tell me a bit more about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, my background in events is actually in corporate event planning. So, I did that for 7 years.
Okay.
Corporate events is definitely a little bit more boring. It's very logistical. But,
Still very
definitely
technical. Yeah.
very technical, very heavy on the logistics. But
Mhm.
it's certainly, when you're planning a wedding, it's not all just pretty fun things. There's also a lot of logistics to it.
Mhm.
So that definitely is a skill set that translates right over to wedding planning. Um, so I did that for 7 years before it became too boring for me, and I was craving the creativity that wedding planning allows me.
Mhm.
So after 7 years, I quit my full time corporate job and have been doing wedding planning full time since.
Wow. So you decided just like that. You said, I want some more creativity in my life. It looks like you're very creative, by the way, because I was looking at your
Oh,
website, all your platforms, even well, obviously Instagram, but also Pinterest. I really love
oh,
the.
thank you.
Yeah, I did my homework. That's what I do.
I'm glad. No, Pinterest. Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
glad. I've.
a lot of
Mhm,
people, I'm sorry, a lot of people in the industry are obviously having a great Instagram, Pinterest as
mhm,
well, but yours is really intimate. I felt a lot of intimacy and
mhm,
a lot of advices, and I really liked it.
mhm. Thank you so much. I'm really glad that you took the time to look at that, and I'm glad that you pointed that out because it's something obviously that I have been putting a lot of effort into.
Of
I
course.
think as an industry, there is so much emphasis on creating pretty pictures, but
Yes.
sometimes there's not a lot of substance to it, I think. Um,
100%. Yeah.
and it's not, I mean, it's totally subjective. Obviously, everyone thinks something, it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But
Hmm.
at the same time, I think, especially with the last year being in lockdown for a lot of places, everyone was just pumping out content after
Yes.
content. And it's not necessarily a good thing
Yeah.
if if everyone's just recycling the same type of content or, and I'm sure as a bride, I don't know what a bride would see when they look at this type of imagery that's like just, kind of mass produced, I think.
Yes.
So for me personally, in the last year, I've been really trying to focus on content that would be useful to a bride. That is, something that they can actually save for later, refer to, actually find inspiration more than just like a pretty image.
Well, I can tell you that it's something that really people can feel like
Hmm.
when they're browsing to your website.
Hmm.
You
Oh,
can
thank
see
you.
the yeah, all the details, the intimacy that you're creating. Besides
Hmm.
the fact that you're obviously providing a lot of tips and providing a lot of experiences in your blog and everything. But you're talking about, for
Hmm.
example, the your business is called Wonderstruck,
Hmm.
and you're talking about the Wonderstruck family and these kind of
Hmm.
things. I think it's people like that. I think it makes it
Yes,
very
I think so.
special.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, in my experience, when I started wedding planning, I did work for a few other companies. I
Uh
worked
huh.
for other planners. I learned from them, and I think what I learned I didn't like was kind of the mass model where sometimes a larger company with many planners working in that company, they take
Yes.
often 40 to 50 weddings a year, and it becomes it's very transactional with each couple.
Hmm.
And it's like they go through the same steps, they plan the wedding, boom, bam, thank you, ma'am, right? Everything's done.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I really wanted to create like a boutique service, and that is why I only actually take on like about 5 couples each year. This is actually before the pandemic. This is how I worked even in Vancouver, was I was only taking about 5 couples a year, because wedding planning, I have to invest so much time into each couple. And
Yes.
and I always say to my couples too, it's a big investment for them. Sometimes a wedding planner is one of the most expensive vendors they will hire. So
Hmm.
it's a big investment for the couple. Then I should be investing the same amount into them. And I can't do that if I have like 10, I'm working with 10 couples a year, So
Hmm.
I always limit it to about 5 couples so that I can truly invest in each. And like you said, kind of like make it a more intimate experience.
Well, that's a really good thing. I think people
Mm,
crave, I think, this kind of feelings, because this is not just a supermarket trip. You're getting married, and you
mm-hmm,
want the full attention of all the vendors, especially your wedding planner. So I think it's a good thing.
mm-hmm.
But what you said is
Exactly.
good. Maybe we could talk about the process. When
Mm-hmm.
people contact you, they reach out to you in one of your great platforms. They're getting in touch, obviously, and then what's going on? Try us a little bit about.
Yeah, so once a couple reaches out, I prefer if they submit the inquiry form on my website, just because it kind of gives me the information I need
Mhm.
to start with. I think couples are often confused when they're searching for vendors, is that they want to hire that vendor. They sometimes forget that it has to be a good fit both ways.
Yes.
So that is the reason why I have a pretty lengthy consultation process. It's for both the couple and myself to see if we're a good fit for each other.
Great.
Um, so once I receive an inquiry, I generally reach out. We schedule a video call. It usually lasts anywhere from 45 minutes up to an hour, and it's a video call where we just talk about all their wedding planning ideas. I don't actually really talk about my services that much, because I am a full service, full design. So
Okay.
I don't offer different packages, day of, etc. So my service is all inclusive. So we don't spend a lot of the call talking about that. Of course, I send over the information that they can read in advance. But for the call, I like to, focus on the couple and what they're looking for in a planner and what they want to achieve for their wedding. Um, so I essentially go through, I have a bunch of questions that I ask them, and I also just listen to them and their ideas.
Mhm.
After the call, I do put together a very detailed quote for them. So this is something that kind of bothers me about the wedding planning industry. Well, specific to wedding planners, is like when I see packages are being offered. Um, that to me, I when I started out, I definitely put packages as well, but I just think it doesn't really work, because obviously
Yes.
every couple is different. Every wedding needs are different. And it's very hard to just be like, okay, this package at this price, works
Hmm.
for your needs, especially when during the wedding planning, you're working with a couple for sometimes more than a year, and their wedding planning needs change. So I think
Yes.
to go the package route just isn't working. Maybe it works for some people, but it doesn't work for me. So that is the reason I do a consultation with the couple, is so that I can put together a custom proposal for them. So the custom proposal, it includes obviously the quote, what I think is appropriate for what we've discussed that their needs are. I also put together a mood board. So I actually take their
Okay.
ideas, what they've told me, obviously it's a 1 hour call, so we don't go into too much detail, but I take what information I can and put together a preliminary mood board for them. This is so that they can see, yes, this is somebody that gets my vision, or
Hmm.
no, they're not the right style for me. So that's part of the board, and sorry, the proposal. And then the last part of the proposal I like to do is a preliminary budget as well. So for most couples, obviously, this is the first time they're getting married. They have no idea how much things cost or what to budget. Um, and obviously, what they want sometimes is not realistic to what they can forward with their budget. So
Okay.
my job, I think, is definitely help them prioritize where they want to spend their budget. So part of the proposal, I also do a breakdown for them just so they can see, what is realistic, what is not realistic of the budget they want to spend. So all of
Mhm.
this goes in a custom proposal that I send over to a couple after we have a consultation. And then if they like it, if they have some changes, we talk about that. We can set up another call. And if they're happy with it, then I onboard them and we start with the planning.
Okay, that looks very organized. I really
So
like
it's a very, very
it.
comprehensive answer. Sorry, I rambled.
I really like that, and I couldn't agree more. This is really what I do as well. I started by doing packages, just as you said,
hmm
and I really
hmm
had the same impression as you. It looked like you were treating people in different ways or putting them into buckets, and I really
hmm
felt that it wasn't personal. And obviously, when you're
hmm
starting to organize or assist to any weddings, you
hmm
realize how different they are. So I really
hmm
agree with that. And also with what you were saying regarding the if people fit on both sides, I really do the
hmm
same. I talk to my
hmm
couples in a very straightforward way, even if it's romantic and it's a love event and everything. I think it's very important to be honest,
hmm
and I really do the same. I talk to them and I say, look, if you probably already know if you're willing to work with me or not, and that's
hmm
really okay. When we
Yes.
have this first phone call or a video call, it's really chemistry. So
hmm
couldn't agree
Yeah,
more.
for sure. Like I said earlier, you're spending with wedding planners at least. I spend more than a year with the couple, sometimes talking like every day. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of time you're spending with someone. You really get to know them. You get to know their family, their friends,
Yes.
and if it's someone you don't have chemistry with,
Mm,
it makes it very difficult, right? So.
that's crazy. So you've been featured in many international wedding blogs and websites, but despite not living in Paris or being based in France. So what do you think, which is not something mandatory, of course, but
uh-huh.
in your own words, what does the words France and wedding mean to you? And why would it be different for a North American, American, Canadian couples to talk to you first and then let them organize their wedding with you?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, France, Paris, it's very synonymous with romance. Um, and I think couples choose this destination because they can get the type of scenery and ambiance that they cannot get back home. So obviously I have some expertise in chateaus in France, and you have so many, like literally there's
Way
so
too much.
many so many chateau options to
Hmm.
choose from. And I think in North America, you have a handful that look like chateaus, or they're just like heritage mansions, and those are very, very popular venues that people who like the type of fine art aesthetic are attracted to. So I think a lot of the reason they choose that is because they like that castle fairy tale um, aesthetic that they want to achieve for their wedding. I think one of the pros of working with somebody who is from North America is that I share the same um, culture as them. Just
Absolutely.
because, yeah, just because there's definitely certain customs and traditions that a French planner might not be accustomed to versus
Yes.
somebody who is from North America
Hmm.
or in Asia with an Asian couple. Obviously, I grew up in an Asian household. I'm from Taiwan originally, so I'm familiar with those aspects of the tradition and the culture.
That's
So I
amazing.
think,
You're
yeah, thank you.
you're all around player.
Uh, yeah, I definitely to try to use that to my advantage when I can.
Mhm.
So I think it's just that expertise that you can't really learn unless you grew up with it, right? Or you grew up in that
Yes.
culture. So um, I think it's just more than just being able to speak English. I also think in France, from what I've seen, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but
Hmm.
a lot of the French vendors, the style is a little bit different. Would you say? Would you agree with like kind of North America
That's yeah,
style, wedding style?
that makes sense. But what would you mean by style? In what way?
Well, actually, two ways. Now that you mention it, the
Hmm.
visually, like the what they design, I think is a
Okay.
little bit different from what couples. I just
Yeah,
think
I
French
agree.
vendors are not as lavish, and definitely from
Yes,
what I've learned, French couples they don't really want to spend that much money on their wedding
definitely
at
not.
all, right?
Which
Exactly.
makes a lot of sense because when French people are from here, they
Uh-huh.
obviously this is their country. They
Exactly.
don't see it just what you were saying. This is not the same
Mm-hmm.
view. When I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to California or Vancouver, I am
Mm-hmm.
amazed, and then maybe you like it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just your city, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, it's
it's really
true.
different. But I agree with you.
It's
You're
absolutely
right.
true. Yeah, I think we're always enamored by the world, but we don't really look in our own backyards,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
we take it for granted. But I think as a result, a lot of the French vendors they have a different sense of like style. So for them, if a couple comes to them and says they want like a lavish wedding, lavish luxury,
Hmm.
that might mean a different thing to them than it
Yes.
might mean to somebody from here, where I interpret lavish and luxury very differently, I
Hmm.
think. And then the second uh, part of style that you said, I think, is planning style and communication style. In my experience, because I've worked with some vendors in France and Italy actually too. So
Hmm.
I think there is not the same type of urgency. The work culture is a little bit
You
different.
say it. You say it so politely. I really admire it.
I think just the work cultural is a little bit different, right, from what
Absolutely.
North
Sadly, yeah.
American, yeah, or Asia is what they're sorry what they are used to here.
Hmm. Yeah.
Here, email communication, text communication, it's very quick,
Yes.
response right away. And I think it's a different culture
Hmm.
in Europe, which there's no wrong way to do it. But I think sometimes if a couple is working with like a European team, sometimes they might not realize that, and it can come as a frustrating experience for them if they don't know and they're trying
Hmm.
to communicate with their vendors, etc. So, uh, long story, long answer. I think that is
That's
why
okay.
sometimes a couple
I
might,
Yeah,
yeah.
I really agree with you about that. I lived in Ireland, in Spain, and in
Mm-hmm.
California.
Mm.
This is when I discovered the difference. Obviously, this is something that we're taking the time to live, to
Yes,
enjoy, and blah blah blah. But I understand
absolutely.
the will to be efficient and
Uh-huh.
go ahead with planning, especially in these stressful times.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was talking about was a friend, a photographer. She's American. She's called
Mm-hmm.
Crystal Kenny.
Okay.
And we often talk about the difference of culture, point of
Mm-hmm.
views, and history, and between, for example, North America in general and Europe. And
Mm-hmm.
I really think this is a strength that you have and Crystal have is that
Mm-hmm.
you know both cultures by
Mm-hmm.
living here, staying here, working here sometimes, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
um, and organizing this, but with having with always keeping in mind your North American culture and Asian for you. Well, this is really good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And your Asian couples, they're most of them, some of them, they're from Canada as well, or also living, literally coming with the Asian background over there.
Yeah, it depends. So definitely
It
some
depends.
are from Canada, and specifically like Vancouver, where I am based. There's a big Asian demographic here,
Hmm.
but I think the ones from abroad are typically coming from Hong Kong for me.
Okay.
So I know a lot of the kind of like the main planners at like Iris wedding planning in
Okay.
France. A lot of their couples are from China, like mainland China. But for me, I do get a lot of inquiries from Hong Kong.
Hong Kong itself.
Hmm. Yes,
That's great.
and I think it comes down to the Chinese language too. I
Of
think,
course.
I don't know if you are familiar, but on my website there is two forms of Chinese. There is, traditional Chinese, and there's simplified Chinese. And in China, they actually, they speak and write in simplified Chinese,
Okay.
whereas in Hong Kong, they do traditional Chinese.
Didn't
Hong
know
Kong,
that.
Taiwan, yeah, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Malaysia, it's traditional Chinese.
Okay.
So I think that's primarily my website, the Chinese version of my website, and all my content is written in traditional Chinese. So I think that is why I attract
Great.
that
Oh,
specific demographic.
thanks
Yeah.
for the information. I didn't know. I wasn't
Mm.
educated as
Oh,
much
it's
in
not.
the Chinese language.
No, it's not very, unless
Great.
you like specifically look at to find out, you wouldn't know. So.
Okay, great. And what's the situation right now with your business regarding the COVID-19 events? We're recording this in February 2021 for those who
Hmm.
join. What would you say
Yeah.
if anything changed? What was it?
Hmm. Uh, I actually feel very fortunate because I personally haven't been very affected by COVID, and I feel bad saying that because I know that the industry as a whole has been very affected, and for a lot of people, this is their primary income. So,
Hmm.
for them, it is a big deal that this last year, and then also this year as well.
Yeah,
A lot of weddings have not been able to move forward. Personally, for me, most all my weddings have been postponed. All my full service weddings have been postponed to next year. I do have a few small elopements and micro weddings happening in Vancouver this year, just because locally. But yeah,
great.
all my full planning destination ones are pushed to next year. I was very blessed with couples that just they're very relaxed about it, and they just didn't want to, push it by a few months and then wait and see what the regulations are and then postpone it again. So
Yeah.
from the very start, from last year, all the couples just said, let's just push it to 2021. And then in December of last year, there's like, it doesn't look like things are improving. Let's just push it to 2022. So as a result, my couples were able to kind of get the dates they wanted in 2022 because they made their decision a lot sooner, I think, than a lot of couples now who are trying to postpone.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, for me, it hasn't affected me too negatively, to be honest. I have four weddings booked for next year, so I have one more date open. As I mentioned, I only take five weddings a year, so
Okay.
I yeah, it hasn't been too different for me personally.
Well, that's good news. That's great because, yeah, as you were
Yeah.
saying, many people have got affected, many
Mhm.
businesses, and yeah, the whole
Mhm.
industry, especially destination wedding
Mhm.
people working here, obviously, yeah, taking a toll. We see the results
Mhm.
now, but yeah, from what I know and what I see, many people have chosen what, the decision that your couple have taken, which is
Mhm.
postponing to last year, and let's see what's going on. So,
Mhm.
France for now is getting better. Paris
Mhm.
got threatened to be under lockdown, and then they decided
Yes.
not to. It's a big mess,
Yeah.
but we're seeing the lights up on the end of the tunnel, and
Of
we'll
course.
see how it goes, and we're staying positive. That's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think, once this all is over too, I think couples will be really looking forward to being able to celebrate. And, travel is obviously a big part of a lot of people's experiences. So I think um, once travel can resume, I don't see why not. Like destination weddings would be right back on the table.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's great to end this conversation on a positive note because what we see on the news when we're watching TV and when we're reading all the forums, we see
Hmm.
negativity and people who are, yeah, being kind of depressed about the situation. So I really love your words,
Yeah.
and I really agree with it. So
Oh, thank you so much. And again, thank you for taking the time and looking at my work and saying kind things about it. It definitely means a lot and validates it. So
that
thank you.
was coming from the heart as always. And thank you so much, Ariel, for taking the time to be on the show. I'm really
Of
pleased to have
course.
you. And once the travel ban is done, I make a point of telling all my guests that we will all reunite in the Eiffel Tower and drink a glass of champagne.
I
So
cannot wait to visit Paris again.
you'll be
Yes.
part of it now. So thanks again so
Absolutely.
much.
Thank
And we'll
you.
see you up soon. Thank you so much.
Of course. Bye.
Hey guys, thanks again for listening to the show today. You can find more information on our guests in the show notes, as well as my contact and my website. If you have any questions regarding your French wedding, I'm happy to help. Also, please do not hesitate to leave a review for the show. There's also a link for that. That will literally take 1 minute of your precious time and will mean the world to me. I always appreciate your support. Thank you again very much for your time and feedback. Wishing you a great day or a great night anywhere you are in the world. I send you some good vibrations and we'll talk to you again soon for a new episode. Bye bye.